Hello and welcome to another episode of Empty the Playbook. Still reeling from a fantastic episode last week with our very first special guest, and of course Mock Draft 2.0. Maybe a more kind of mellow, chilled out vibe this week. Quite nice as we kind of give an introduction to the NFL and why people should get interested in it, and kind of how we found our way into the NFL and American football in general. But before we do that, we've got a couple of things to get out of the way. So first off, let's check in with the boys. Thornsy, coming to you first. I know. I sounded like Nessa from Gavin and Stacey then. I know. Thornsy, how you doing, bro?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back on the show.
You say this every week like you're a special guest. You've been here every single episode.
I'm just thankful for my moment and appreciating it. And I try and live in the present, I don't want to get bogged down by the yesterdays and tomorrows and just focus on what's going on right now. So yeah, I'm actually looking for new posters as we speak because my walls are very plain.
Okay. What kind of vibe are you going for? You going for like movies, inspirational quotes, pictures of cute dogs?
I hadn't thought about movies.
Yeah.
I might get some movie ones. I was going to go something Native American. Sorry.
I'll get revenge, and I won't do it if it's Native American, but if it's just a regular poster, I'm going to get revenge for you graffitiing on my poster last year.
Anyway, I haven't introduced you yet, so I don't know why you're speaking.
Yeah.
Puts himself on mute straight away. I love it. But yeah, so you're thinking maybe movies now?
Yeah, I mean, if I can find, I want things that speak to who I am as a person and as a, oh God, I feel like a hippie. But yeah, well. I'm looking at posters. But yeah, my week's been all right. It's been like a short week as well, because obviously we filmed a bit late or recorded a bit late last week. So yeah. Completed GTA 5 to 100%.
Oh wow!
A landmark.
Yeah, that does deserve a round of applause. Fair play.
I did a fair bit of that.
Still haven't introduced you.
I just want to, shout out to my friends and family that helped me through it, and it was about 3 days of my life well spent. Not as in like 3 days as in like playing it for like an hour a day. It was like 72 hours of gameplay or something ridiculous.
Oh, do you know, when you started that speech then, I forgot what we were talking about, and I thought you were being genuine and sincere about thanking your family. I was like, what did he say that I forgot what you were talking about? No, definitely fantastic achievement, mate. I'm really proud of you. I hope your family are too. And I hope all the fans are.
You guys just started clapping and it sort of set something off.
Well, yeah.
So
there you go. The pride within. As the listeners will know from his multiple interruptions over Thornsy's life story, of course we've got Shapland in as well, who's a permanent part of the furniture. How are you doing, Shaps?
Well, before I talk about myself, I just want to quickly say the stark contrast of Thornsy there. You've got his spiritual reawakening of getting in touch with his inner nature and inner Native American, and then also he's completed a video game. So both Native American versus modern American. But anyway,
dissonance.
There you go. Well, after that big word, back to me.
Yeah.
Big words, I should say. So Easter Sunday is obviously just gone past. So I had back-to-back roasts because I went back home. So this has been the highlight of my week. And obviously with the rule of 6, it worked out. So my brothers had to come one at a time. So obviously like sitting out on the patio eating. So my mum did so basically one of my brothers would get annoyed if one of them had a roast and the other one didn't. So my mum did a roast on Saturday and a roast on Sunday. So I'd roasts back to back, and now I can play O-line. So like, yeah, bulking.
Yeah, or maybe like a fullback kind of like position, as we like to play with the Pirates. Seeing as your Pirates career is, well, is it fair to say your Pirates career is still going on, or are we calling
My Pirates career is dead. I will never play another game for the Pirates except for Old Boys, and that will probably be me as an old boy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a sad day.
Yeah.
I'm a coach technically still, so
for the team.
Can't get rid of me that quickly.
No, fair enough. It's good to be still part of obviously the setup anyway. Do you know what, boys? I obviously normally don't share too much about my week. I like to ask the questions more than I like to tell stories. But I've had a really nice couple of days, actually, over the last couple of weekends in Wales. They've changed the rules.
No one asked you.
I was about to open my heart then. I was really in that story then. I was heartbroken. I was like, what's happening? Someone interrupted.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm going to carry on anyway with or without your opinion. It really caught me off guard then. Yeah, over the last couple of weekends, we're now allowed to travel wherever we want to within Wales. We obviously can't end up like in the UAE or something like that, which would be banging, but not just yet. So yeah, anywhere within Wales. And my nan and granddad live about 45 minutes away, and I haven't seen them since before Christmas. And obviously we're now into April. So on Thursday, I just turned up at the door and went to see them for a couple of hours. And my nan was really, really surprised, and it was really, really nice. So I had a nice moment there or a nice couple of hours with my nan and my granddad. So that was really nice, having a bit of a catch up with them. And that was probably the highlight of my week. Just opening up to you all there, sharing a piece of my heart, which was nice.
Yeah, sounds lovely. Actually, I can't wait to see my grandma and granddad again.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, both of them. Well, yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean? Mine as well.
your grandparents, Shaps' grandparents, anyone's grandparents. I miss them.
Yeah, to be fair, do you know, it's one of those things, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but like it was beforehand. I was a bit like, like they live like not, don't get me wrong, like 45 minutes isn't horrendous, but I was like, they do live a bit away, and I've got to drive over there and then drive back and different things like that, and I just feel a bit wary with all the rules and in terms of safety as well, because obviously they are a bit older, so there was a few kind of things to do with it, but yeah, no, it was a good decision in the end and was really nice. But with that being said, people aren't here to hear about our personal lives, not after the first 5 minutes anyway. It's now time to talk some NFL, and as we do every episode, it's time to get stuck in with the news. Not loads and loads of news stories this week in the NFL, but things we can definitely kind of pluck out of it, I'm sure, and give a couple of takes on. This week, or over the past 7 days, there's been pro days for LSU, Florida, Ohio State, Oregon, amongst others. I can't remember when the Alabama one was. That might have happened by the last time we recorded, but I mean, there's been loads of pro days over the past week. So we've seen guys like Jamar Chase, Justin Fields, Penei Sewell, Carl Pitts, all turning up for their pro days and providing some interesting numbers. So that was really, really cool. And I'm sure will assist in our draft knowledge going forward. But yeah, so that's been kind of one of the main stories of this week. I've included this because I thought it was funny. Bruce Arians' tattoo of the Bucks win was quite funny. I can't remember fully what he got. I think he just got kind of the logo and Super Bowl, whichever one it was. I always forget the number. but yeah, he said he was going to get it, and he followed up on that. So good for him. And I've always rated Bruce Arians, to be fair, since I watched. Was it All or Nothing the Cardinals were on, or was it Hard Knocks? It was All or Nothing.
It was.
Yeah. And he was on that, and it kind of like heard about him and his wife and their really nice relationship and everything like that. And he just always seemed like quite a sound guy, as well as obviously a very good coach. So good for him. I like a feel-good story. One for Shaps, which has been announced in the past couple of hours, which I thought was quite interesting. I don't know what it entails going forward, but I know you like crunching the numbers, Shaps. So going forward now, NFL players will be paid over 36 weeks rather than the 17 weeks of the regular season, which is interesting. I mean, I say regular season, that might be me just making an assumption. They might be, 17 weeks starting from training camp or whatever. I don't know. That's not kind of my area of expertise. But I thought that was actually quite interesting news, because there will be some implications, I'm sure, of what that means for the cap going forward and things like that, which obviously either helps or hinders certain teams in making their roster better or worse, because that's obviously the amount they're allowed to spend. So yeah, I thought that was interesting and something maybe we won't get too much into today, because I have just sprung that on Shaps right now. But
Whoa. We've just had, someone has just sent a message. Apparently Sam Darnold is now a Panther.
Whoa!
Live, literally that news has just broken. Like as you were doing that announcement, I just had a phone notification.
Okay, I tell you what, we'll come back to that, but live reactions, this is great. We'll carry on with the news. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm going to look up and find out what that is while you finish off the news.
Yeah, great. I've got one kind of one really important point to finish off the news, and then hopefully you can kind of finish that off, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of it. Imagine if it turns out to be fake news now. I'd love it. And knowing our luck, it probably will be. But anyway, so that would be interesting to see the implications that has on the cap. And then the last kind of piece of really serious NFL news this week, Aaron Rodgers is going to host Jeopardy for 2 weeks, which I didn't know that was news that I needed in my life, but that'll be fun, because Aaron Rodgers is a bit of a character, isn't he? Let's be fair. And honestly, obviously replacing the fantastic. I know we've probably never watched loads and loads of it, because we're British, so why would we? But yeah, it'll be nice to see Aaron Rodgers do that for a couple of weeks. I say that, very unlikely to watch it, but I just thought that was fun news. Great. So that was the news. Normally, this is where I go, what are your takes, gentlemen? But first off, I guess we've got to come to Shaps, or Thorns, if he's found out any more about.
Yeah.
Any more news about the Sam Darnold trade?
Yeah, I've got it, and it's down as, this isn't an official source I found, but it's the first source I could find. So I'm sorry.
It's just come up on Bleacher Report as well, so
yeah,
it must be
Adam Schefter. It is Sam Darnold to Carolina for a 2021 6th-round pick and a 2nd and a 4th in 2022.
Do you know
which
what?
Isn't bad value, getting the 2nd and the 4th back. I know he's obviously, what was he, 2nd overall behind Baker? Third.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, live take, I don't know what to make of it. I think, honestly, it does look like the Jets obviously losing out on a 1st-round pick quarterback like that. But realistically, they're going to draft a quarterback anyway. The rumors are it's going to be Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
But they're going to draft a quarterback anyway. So realistically, I don't think Darnold would be around much longer past this season, and they'd probably lose him for next to nothing anyway. You look at whatever Josh Rosen's going around for nowadays, probably a pack of Quavers. Like, to cash in now, I believe Sam Darnold is a good player, but to cash in now is good for the Jets, I think. But yeah, well, the fact, could they have built around Sam Darnold? Maybe, but to get a 2nd, a 4th, and a 6th, I know they've got to wait a year for the 2nd and the 4th, but I'd say that's some bang up value. And for the Panthers, it's potentially a really good pickup with Sam Darnold if they can get him to be the quarterback everyone thought he'd be. that could be a really good pickup. But yeah, so it's very interesting to say the least, because they've still got Teddy Bridgewater under contract. They signed him to a 3-year, 63 million deal just last year. So I don't know how much of that's guaranteed. I'd have to look into the numbers a bit more. But I assume they've probably got 1 year or so guaranteed left, if that. So he's probably on the chopping block next year. They might have to keep him this year because I don't think they'll have much choice contract wise. But we'll have to see. But yeah, I think it's interesting all round. I don't think there's any losers of this trade. I'd say it's a pretty on the money trade. Not sure what you guys think.
Yeah, do you know what? It's interesting as well because I don't know if you'd expect much more value. Do you know what I mean? I know he's the former 3rd overall pick, but like although I do think Darnold can be a really solid star in the NFL, I don't think he's kind of proven that yet. And I mean, he has been given trash to work with in New York, but yeah, it would be interesting to see what he can do in Carolina. Thornsy, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think Darnold, with the weapons he is going to have in Carolina, I think that's going to be really exciting. And he's never really had like a good running back. Like, that's not shade at Le'Veon Bell because he wasn't really in his prime when he went to New York. But having C-Mac hopefully healthy and fully fit, a good, if not great, O-line in front of him. And I can't remember who their offensive coordinator is, but I'm pretty sure he's quite high in a lot of people.
Joe Brady is the former head coach of LSU in the Joe Burrow championship thing.
I mean, there we go. A good offensive coordinator. Adam Gase wasn't great as an OC for the last few years.
No.
And like, it's just a great opportunity to see him play like outside of New York as well. And for Carolina, like, they've not given up a lot to get him. Like, if it doesn't pan out, if it doesn't work, he can just come back next year and they can take a QB again. And I know that's sort of like, when are they going to get off that carousel? But at the same time, like, you've got to keep swinging until you hit something. Also, I don't really like Quavers. I'd say skips if I was going to get Rosen. They're the same sort of crisp, really, aren't they? Because when I had my braces put on, I don't have braces now. I'm 22 years old. When I was like 15.
Poor George.
I had to eat skips or Quavers because they're like soft crisps that you can like easily chew when your teeth are hurting. And I always chose skips. So yeah, I think it's a bit insulting to say Josh Rosen's only worth Quavers.
Sorry.
But yeah,
are you suggesting?
Sorry.
Are you suggesting he's worth a packet of skips instead, or are you just telling us your life story? I don't know what you're
saying as he prefers skips, that he'd rather get a pack of skips for Josh Rosen than a pack of Quavers. He doesn't think Rosen's worth Quavers. He thinks Rosen's worth more than Quavers, but about this on par with skips.
Maybe a multi-pack. Yeah. No, I mean, Josh Rosen it's obviously metaphorical. Josh Rosen is supremely talented and worth a lot more than a packet of skips, no matter how many you're going to give up for.
Worth a 10th overall pick by the sounds of things.
Yeah. I mean, imagine how many skips you can get with that. Well, I think Teddy Bridgewater was a bit of a loser here as well.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything to really warrant being replaced, if that's how they view Darnold or what they view Darnold as. And I think it sort of shows the lack of patience that NFL teams have at the moment with building around a QB. Like, Bridgewater isn't old; he's still got 5-6 years in him easy. And they've just sort of taken 1 year, look at him and been like, yeah, no, we're just going to move on and get another guy to shake it up. So I feel bad for him here, and I think for Darnold, it could be quite nice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well because it won't be kind of like Tua and Fitzpatrick last year where they kind of shared the role for Miami. It is literally, I think, going to be a case now of like, because Darnold's third year pro now. 18 they were drafted, wasn't it?
He's going into his 4th year.
Yeah, going into 4th year. So it literally is a prove it year pretty much for Darnold. It's a case of like, if someone's going to pay you starting quarterback money, this is the year that you're going to have to say,
Well, I believe they get the chance to pick up his 5th year option, even though he's a second team.
I
believe
because is that change when you change teams?
No, I think because he was traded, you could trade the contract. So if he was cut and re-signed, then he. But yeah, to get the 5th year option, which means obviously if he plays well next year, you can get him for 5th year slightly more expensive. But I think it's something like 15 million, which if he plays well, isn't bad to be paying his starting quarterback. Considering at that point you'd be able to cut Teddy, I assume.
Yeah.
Even if he functions as like a good backup, 50 mil is sort of the benchmark for that. I mean, it's expensive, but like Tyrod Taylor's being paid 12.5 million in Houston, so it's not like unreasonable to have him as a backup.
Well, he'll be on about 8 mil or so, I'm speculating, for next year. So he's not expensive cap wise. But anyway, so I'm being nerdy again.
No, perfectly. It's great. We love the numbers. Thanks, Shaps. That's why you're here. Great. Well, that was live reaction and very exciting. Any other takeaways from the news, or are we going to leave it there? So just kind of reminder. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I'll remind you of what's going on, but go ahead.
Well, first off, we're just giving away when we record the podcast, so we might have to have to black out that whole section. Can't have everyone knowing our secrets. But yeah, so I've got 2 people who really. One of them was sort of last week's news, but obviously we didn't really cover it as much because we were doing the mock draft. And anyway, I've got my 2 big takeaways. Is it Away? Is how you pronounce it? The defensive end running a 4.49. Let me just
Jason Oweh from Penn State.
Yeah, running a 4.39.
4.36, I think he ran.
4.39. I've got up the time here actually, and still putting on
Sorry.
and still putting on 21 on the bench at like 6'5", and he's listed here as 257 pounds. Like, what? Like, that is freakish numbers. Like, I think he's worked his way into being a first round pick purely off his pro day there, because with that sort of upside you can get from that. The other one is a personal favorite player of mine is Kyle Pitts. I think the more I've been watching some Kyle Pitts highlights, that, like I was just saying before the podcast started, I've been watching his highlights. The more and more I watch of him, the more I love everything I see, and I'm hoping we won't have a sort of TJ Hawkinson tight end freshman slump. I'm hoping we can see him hit the ground running. I think part of the issue is I think tight end's a much more technical position in the NFL than it is in college. But yeah, I think if you get a team that's willing to sort of almost, it sounds stupid, but almost try and build an offense around giving Kyle Pitts big time catches and big time plays. Like, if you could plug him into any offense in the NFL, I think, and he's making a serious difference. I genuinely couldn't picture one offense in the NFL where he doesn't make a serious difference. He ran a 4.44 in his 40. He put 22 up on the bench as well for a tight end. So like he's a strong man. He's got 33 and a half wingspan. He's got 83 and 3/8 wingspan, 33 and a half arms. Like, all his measurables are coming out just like we knew he was freakish, but his measurables are just saying more and more and more. And honestly, I can't wait to see what he does at the next level.
Yeah, the closer it gets to the draft, and obviously he's listed as a tight end, that is his position. But I kind of just see him more, and this might be just my take, and people might completely disagree with me. I see him as kind of more that big body receiver, which I know isn't a massive difference, but yeah. And so if teams aren't necessarily tight end, or they need a tight end needy was the phrase I was going to use, I think he's still worth taking because he's that much of an offensive weapon. I think one of the it's not going to happen now because they've moved up to 3, But one of the kind of mock draft predictions that I really liked before that trade with the 49ers and the Dolphins was Pitts to the 49ers to team up with Kittle. And they would have used him in kind of like a dual tight end sort of situation. But I also like him going somewhere. I can't think anywhere kind of off the top of my head, but like somewhere that they're going to use him as more of like a big body receiver. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes.
He's an every down player. Like you're gonna line him up at tight end, but you're never gonna want him off the field. You're just gonna flex him out whenever you can.
No, he can play literally like in kind of like that bunch like trips, but he could also be like if trips, he could also be the single side receiver. Like it's mad the versatility. I'm really excited to see what happens there. Thornsy, any takes? Anyone you're really excited to see after their pro day, or anything else that you want to talk about? Bruce Arians' tattoo. Up to you.
I am excited about the cornerbacks and how that's going to shape out at the top. We saw Caleb Farley obviously falling down a lot of mock drafts and a lot of people's big boards for his back surgery that he's got to have. And we've also seen JC Horn and Patrick Surtain come in and put in freaky pro days. So I think those two are, who the people view as the top out of those two, and whether Farley's draft stock's going to tumble completely and end up sort of knocking him out forever. Also, I think Greg Newsome out of Northwestern had quite a good pro day. So I think he's another guy that is, coming into that conversation in the first round. Yeah, I think that'll be my big takeaway. And I'm very skeptical about all these pro day times, because we've seen a lot of quick people, like a lot of people going sub 4.4 and like running these freakish times. And I just don't know because obviously if you jump, like they have the same sort of measure and stuff, like for the broad jump, for the vertical jump, but when it's timed, it's like, are you a little bit slow there to press the button? Is this a little bit of
Yeah, to be fair, it is quite interesting with these kind of 40 times and how much you believe them. But I think I kind of read somewhere, or maybe I heard it on another podcast. How dare I? I know. I think it's something like.
Others. Sorry.
What did you say? There are no others. Other podcasts are available. No, I think it's something like you take 3% off. Oh no, you add 3% on from their pro day times. This might be specific to 40 times, as opposed to all the kind of measurables that happen at a pro day and at the combine. But I think you add kind of 3% on, and that number might be wrong because it's in the back of my mind somewhere. But I'm gonna stick it in and hope that I stick the landing with that number. But yeah, it's something like that. Something like 3%. There you go. Yeah, Shaps have crunched some numbers.
Yeah, so that makes Away's 40 time under the Daniel Williams mathematics of 40 times. Away's actually run a 4.52, which is still freaky, but
yeah, but also makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
So there you go. But yeah, cool. Right. With that being said, and we've had lots of fun with the news. We've had some live reactions, and we finished it off with some math. So great. That was the news. So as we kind of said at the top of the show, that we're going to keep it kind of a bit more informal this week and have kind of a chat, or get a bit more in depth about our journeys into why we like American football, why we got involved in the NFL, and why we think prospective fans should have a go with it and try and stick with it, because as has happened on multiple shows throughout the series so far, and even with Max last week, it's one of those things that once you kind of try and have a go at getting involved in it, it does become really, really interesting, and you do start to really, really enjoy it. So if you're a prospective fan and you've waited till this far in the show, thank you for sticking with us. And we hope we can help you out and give you some tips on how to get involved with the NFL. So first off, I guess we kind of really need to start with a very, very quick kind of overview of the rules of the game, or just the point of the game. And again, this will be very, very quick, but it's only fair for people that are just getting introduced to American football to let them know kind of what's going on in the game that we love. So both teams have 11 players on the field at any one time. The object of the game is to score a touchdown by either running or passing the ball to somebody that's either in the end zone. You have 4 plays while you're on offense to try and get 10 yards at a time. If you pass that line of 10 yards on your first, second, third play, or even fourth play, you get a new set of 4 downs, and you keep continually doing that, move along the field until you score a touchdown. Other ways to score a touchdown are by kicking the ball through the posts before scoring a touchdown, which is worth 3 points, also known as a field goal. And there are a few other ways to score points, but that's the general kind of gist of how you play the game. And obviously the defense is there to stop you, as they are in any sport, really, if there's the defense. But yeah, that's kind of the general kind of rules of it, really. It's just you have your 11 players on offense trying to score a touchdown against your 11 players on defense, and then each team takes a turn trying to score points on each other. And you won't believe it, boys, but whoever has the most points at the end only goes and wins. It's mad. Absolutely mad. But yeah, Shaps, you look desperate to say something.
I can't believe a 2-time special team captain just did an overview of American football and left out special teams.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't mention special teams the entire time. But yeah, that's something that if you're new to the game, you might not sort of necessarily, all right, fine, I'll do a little bit about special teams. I kind of mentioned it with the field goal unit. If you're kicking through the posts, that's one of your special teams. One of your other special teams is either kickoff, when you're starting the play again after somebody scored a touchdown, or you can have a punt, which is if you've gone through your first 3 plays trying to get 10 yards and you haven't quite reached it yet, and you want to risk that 4th play, rather than trying to get it and then giving the other team the ball where you stop, you can kick the ball away, which is called a punt. And yeah, so that's kind of a general overview. That's kind of the boring stuff, really. That's just the general rules to help you get involved. But yeah, I think moving on from kind of here, we'll talk about best ways that we think people can sort of start. Like if people want to get involved in American football, the best ways that we found over our time following the sport as like the best stepping stone to get involved first. If you're like, oh, I want to give this a go, but I'm not really sure the best route to kind of get involved in. These are just a couple of tips to help you do that. So who wants to start us off with being the fountain of all knowledge? Thornsy, thanks, mate. Thanks for nominating yourself.
For me, it was just watching the NFL Top 100 program that they bring out on YouTube. I assume you've both watched plenty of them. There's brackets. They're both nodding. It's just like a really sort of fun way to learn about the game and learn about it in a way that promotes like the players and their like attributes and what they can do as like athletes and as just feats of brilliance. And it kind of gives you that perspective of like, they'll show you what the guy did, and then they'll have another pro on it being like, this is why what he did was so cool and why he's been so good this year. And like for someone that's always sort of, that was kind of on the fringes of watching it, to see that and to sort of know, right, this guy's sick, this guy's good, this guy's a great player, and here's why, it sort of just opened that door of being like, okay, I kind of understand what I'm watching now. And you know, the video, they're like 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long each. Like, you could easily just watch a couple if you're bored, and they're really like sort of get you into the game. So I would recommend them. And then I think just sort of sitting like this and just talking with people that also watch it is something that was really like, it really gets you into it and sort of gets you fired up. And like, you know, for us, we've sort of been watching it for a while, so it's not as prevalent. But like, my dad just started watching it, and so we'll sit and he supports the Packers, so we'll watch a Packers game together and talk through it all. And I think if you watch it by yourself, you're just going to get lost. But if you can have someone to sort of break it down a little bit, like you guys have just done, I think that really sort of makes it a lot more enjoyable and understandable. So that's what I would suggest.
Nice, thanks, Thorns. There's some really nice ideas there. Like you said, short videos that can help some of the big names in the sport. I saw people like my mortal enemy Tom Brady, the whole world knows, and other names like that probably crop up in different media. But seeing how some of the best guys in the sport do their day job is a good way to go about it, and really, really interesting. And of course, like you said, just having conversations with people that are interested, as the three of us are. And even if you are not too sure about things and want to hit us up on Instagram or whatever, and different things like that, that's a great way to get the conversation started. How about yourself?
DMs.
Yeah, definitely slide into our DMs. We're awaiting your messages. That makes us sound desperate. I'm please
We get
message
tons
us.
of messages. We don't need you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, we'll try to get back to you in like 7 to 10 working days.
No, we won't.
Anyway, right. Christ. Chaps, thoughts? Good ways to get involved or get interested in the NFL?
Yeah, so for me, how I sort of got involved was really a sort of two-headed monster. There's two sides to it, really. There's the side that really dipped my toes in the water, which is, fun fact about me, I'm quite a big film buff. I love films. I watch a lot of films. I normally watch at least like one movie a day. Just shows how much free time I probably should be spending doing work. But I'm someone who doesn't sleep that much or that well. So I only ever used to, like, for instance, when I was younger, I used to sleep like 5 hours a night. So like when I was supposed to be asleep, I'd just stick on a film, and then I ran out of films. So I started watching all these classic like high school American football films, and then working your just way to American football films. So it started off with some films like The Express Lane, which I've said before is why I support the Browns. Great film. Films like Friday Night Lights, Any Given Sunday is a classic film. There's countless more that I won't go over every film. And then also Friday Night Lights, the TV show as well, was also quite good. Anyway, there's a lot of media out there. And yeah, I just really started to sort of get accustomed to the culture, and I thought it was really cool. And then I was like, but the thing is, I never really had a clue what any of it was, but it sort of opened my eyes to the fact that, yeah, American football is actually kind of cool. So then the second head of the monster is the second demon, if you will, is Madden. I spoke about this before in my first introduction to the podcast. Is the second my main way in was Madden. So basically, I bought Madden, didn't have a fucking clue. You know what? I bought it, played it once, didn't have a clue what was going on, quit the game and didn't play it for about a month after. And I think that's the problem with American football. I agree with Thornsy completely in that it's best to watch with someone who already knows what they're on about, or to watch with like the rules up on your phone. Because if you try and jump in at the deep end, quite often you drown. But with Madden, so they had these things called the gauntlet, where it broke it down. You had like rushing objectives. So I was like, okay, so this is what I'm doing. You have to run the ball, and yet this is that. Well, that's an inside run, that's an outside run. Sort of explained it through to me, and then it was like, oh, this is the passing objective. So I was like, okay, so I've got my receivers. Fast is good, but also catching's good. Start like you know, sort of getting to grips with that. So learning about the passing side. And then there was also a bit where you played as defense. So then I sort of put the two together, and that's where sort of special teams comes in. We didn't go too much into it, but special teams is sort of the finer part of football. But anyway, so yeah, it's just sort of putting it all together. And then once I sort of like, I found that really great, just seeing it all broken down into Madden. And then I just started playing Madden quite a lot. And I was like, okay. So then I was like, I started playing like against the computer, and I was like, oh well, if the safeties come up, that means that I know I can throw this deep in behind. And then without realizing it, I was reading coverages and I was reading plays. And then the more I started going, well, what do I do if they sit off? And I was like, well, if they sit off, you can take the under route. But then what if they're sort of one sits off, one goes back, and then that's where you need maybe like a different play. And it all just sort of snowballed into more and more of an interest. And then it got to the point where I was watching more American football than everything else. I've said this to the guys before, I don't know if it was recorded on the podcast, but I feel like the first year you watch the NFL is almost the year you go in the hardest for a lot of people. But the first year I watched the NFL, I went fully immersed in the water. I watched probably hours and hours of draft videos, because obviously as a Browns fan, we always draft high. So I watched hours and hours of draft videos. I knew the ins and outs. I watched Building the Browns. I watched Hard Knocks. I watched it all. I just threw myself into it because I think I was quite bored at the time. It was there was not much else going on in my life at that time, so I just threw myself into the NFL. And I think that's the best way, is to sort of slowly introduce yourself through films, so you get to see, oh, this is sort of the culture behind American sports, and then through like Madden or some other aspect where you're sort of understanding how the game works. This is why that. And then I think that makes the game so much more enjoyable. Like watching NFL was the last thing I did. Was my last progression, because I had no one to, I was self-taught. And if I'd have just tried to watch an NFL game, I think I did try when I like watched films, I had no clue what was going on. I thought it was too slow. So I'd say that's my main thing, is to sort of make sure you ease yourself into it and just sort of learn it section by section, really try and understand what's going on. And then also don't be afraid if you don't understand what's going on, just ask questions or try and figure out what's going on. Like everything has a reason in American sports, unless you're Adam Gase calling a cover zero on a Hail Mary. So like everything has a reason, and that sentence probably made no sense if you're new to the NFL. Anyway, yeah, so I feel like I've been going on for a while and sort of getting into the sort of nitty gritty of my life a bit too much, but yeah, just basically just don't be afraid. Like it's a lot to take in the NFL. Just take it slowly. Just try and understand. I'd say Madden is one of the best places, but also Madden, if you try and play a game of Madden and you don't know what you're doing, like I played against my brother when I first bought the game, and I was throwing on 4th and 45 because I was like, why the hell would I just give you the ball back and punt it? That makes no sense. But that's where it comes down to like understanding the game. And I always say one of the best things to do whenever someone talks to me about watching the NFL is there's a really good YouTube video by the NFL just explaining all the ways you can score, how offense works, how defense works. 10 minutes, and it perfectly explains the rules, because obviously they'd probably put a fair bit of money into making sure it's the perfect explanation, and it is the perfect explanation. So just Google understanding the NFL, and I think I watched that video as well, probably when I started as well, when it helps. And then just, yeah, don't be afraid, just jump head in. I always think picking a team also helps, unless you're Thornsy, who went like 7 years of watching the NFL without ever having a team, and now recently has decided that he likes Vegas, maybe because of his love of strippers, who knows. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. Also, I think you'll find it's not the perfect explanation, because I think you'll find my explanation at the start of this section was the perfect explanation. It most certainly, yeah, I know. It most certainly was not a very good explanation, but thank you, Shaps, for helping us out, because I think that's a really nice place to start. And I think you raise a good point that it's one of those things where kind of like, if you watch a show on Netflix, not necessarily about American football, just a general show, and you binge it all, and then you're like, oh, especially if it's a show that's like still going, it hasn't finished. You're like, oh, now I have to wait another year or another 2 years for the next sort of series, and it's a bit like, oh, like what do I do to fill my fix of this show? Well, the great thing about the NFL is that there is so much media around it. Like you said, there's so many good films to do with American football. There's so many good series on Netflix to do with American football and Amazon Prime and different places like that. There's different YouTube videos that kind of Thornsy's already talked about that are short 2-minute, 3-minute videos or like longer ones. There's so much media around it that if you watch a series and go, oh, I want more of this, like you go in with the attitude, oh, I'll give this a go, and you go, yeah, do you know what, I really like this, and you want more. There is always more wherever you look. If you just type in like American football or NFL and try to find it, it's going to be there for you to watch and enjoy and to get involved in. And just getting your head in the door is going to carry on and help you grow the love or your love for this sport. I think my kind of points, mine might be a very different approach and not necessarily conventional, but I'm the sort of person that just loves playing fantasy sports, wherever it may be. Fantasy Premier League, fantasy Six Nations, fantasy NFL.
I thought we were done talking about the Six Nations, so I'm still sad.
Yeah, I had to slip it in somehow. But it kind of raises a good point of like the fantasy Six Nations. Normally, I would watch Wales's matches, well, behind the sofa. But obviously, it was a good year this year. Didn't want to mention that again, but seeing as you bring up Shaps, there you go. But normally, I would just watch my team's matches and not bother with the other matches. And because I've got involved in fantasy this year, playing the Six Nations, it's my first year of doing it. I've watched every single minute of rugby because I wanted to know how certain players have got on and different things like that. And I want to watch more teams. And it's just, and now, even if I don't play the fantasy next year, I know that I'll probably now want to watch every single game because it's helped me get my foot in the door. And I go, oh, that player played well last year. I wonder how he's getting on this year. Or, oh, he didn't play that well. And like, interesting to see like young players coming up and different things. And so that helps you get your foot in the door. And that is weirdly how I kind of got my foot in the door with, or one of the ways I got my foot in the door with American football was one of my mates suggested that, because I had a slight knowledge of the NFL, like a couple of teams and different things like that. He went, oh, why didn't you join in with our fantasy league this year? And I was like, oh, I don't know how it works, but yeah, I'll give it a go. And it's a chance to get to know a few more people because I knew maybe 3, 4 out of the 10 people that were in the league. And so you join a fantasy league like that. And even if you don't necessarily know anyone that plays fantasy, American football or fantasy NFL, there's like randomly generated leagues you can join and different things like that where, there's the opportunity to join the chat room and have a conversation and different things like that. But I didn't know any of the players then. And I didn't know how fantasy kind of worked. And I didn't know which players would be good in my team and different things like that. I picked guys I kind of like semi-heard of. And I knew people that year that picked people because they had amazing names, as a lot of the players do in the NFL. Terry McLaurin being one example.
Yeah. I love his name.
I feel like this whole section by me has been bashing you, Shaps, and I'm really sorry, but it will probably carry on and I won't be able to help myself. So sorry. But that's how I kind of started off. And then again, it gets your foot in the door and you learn more about it. And then it also makes you want to watch it more every week to find out how your fantasy team's getting on and how certain players get on. And then, you learn more about certain positions and different things like that. So it's just, there's so many different avenues that we've kind of all talked about, which I found really, really interesting. And I don't know whether these are kind of the ways that really helped you guys get in or whether they're just kind of things that you found out through research before the show or whatever. But I think it's really, really interesting. And my last point, maybe to tie it up nicely, maybe not, but it was definitely helped me. Which is really, really interesting. I think they should do maybe in more sports. They kind of have it with football, with Gillette Soccer Saturday, but you don't really watch football as such. You listen to 5 guys in a studio talk about it. Red Zone on a Sunday. I think whoever came up with that format is an absolute genius. Red Zone is kind of, I want to say, the flagship show now for NFL on a Sunday, because it probably is the biggest thing that everyone watches. In Britain, it used to be kind of whatever the game was on at 6 o'clock and whatever the game was on at 9 o'clock or 9:30 on a Sunday night. And now it's become Red Zone, although it might not be on the main channel. And basically what Red Zone is, if you don't know, is whoever is the closest to scoring out of all the games that are on at the time, they just show you that game. And then if somebody else scores in a different game, they show you that touchdown, and they show you every single touchdown from every single game from 6 p.m. on a Sunday evening all the way through till about 1 a.m., half 1, if you want to stay up that late. Obviously, it is a school night. So if you need to get to bed, that's fine. And there's no breaks. And don't get me wrong, Scott Hansen, who is my idol, top man, is a machine. And I don't know how he does it well. He has a very like salty diet, apparently, before they do the show, so he doesn't need to pee. But anyway,
that's more than I ever wanted to know about Scott Hansen.
Yeah, sorry, that was probably a bit too much information. But yeah, and I find that's just really interesting because it's always exciting. There's always something happening in Red Zone. They keep you up to date with the news from all the games. And it's just, yeah, you don't need to kind of think, oh, which game should I watch or whatever. They cover that for you. And if you do go down the fantasy route, which I've kind of already talked about, that helps you out in that regard as well, because they keep track of, kind of how everyone's doing and different things like that. So I think those are my kind of ways in. But I also, think there's lots of ways for you to try, as we've kind of found out over this conversation here today. So thanks, boys.
Yeah, just trying to piggyback you a little bit there. I'll just say again, Red Zone. It's even nowadays, sometimes, unless it's the Browns playing or I've got some sort of vested interest in the game, I struggle to sometimes watch a full American football game because like I've got a bad attention span. I'll just flick on my phone during the breaks. But Red Zone, like Dan says, it's literally billed as 7 hours of commercial-free football, commercial-free football like that.
How did I get through my whole bit without saying, sorry, Shaps, I cut you off.
Yeah.
How did I get through my whole bit without saying 7 hours of commercial-free football?
But yeah, so that's
my favorite NFL catchphrase.
But that's literally what it is. You're literally sat there watching the best of the best. It's like watching live match of the day. Like watching live match of the day. It's sick. And on top of that, if you go to this isn't a hashtag ad, this is a free promotion for Scott Hansen, who I actually believe came up with the idea for Red Zone, or him and some other people I think I saw. But so you can go to NFL Network or whatever.com and buy a membership to Red Zone in the UK for, I think it's either £20 or £40. I don't know, because I've never bought it because I always just use Thornsy's. So you buy it for £20 or £40, and that's a season worth of football games, except for the playoffs. But the playoffs aren't like an extra tenner. But like a season worth of football games, boom, 20, 40 quid, and it's great price and it's worth it 100%. And like Dan said, it's built for fantasy. Like you literally have rolling leaderboards at the bottom saying who's the top fantasy scorers for each positions, who's having the best games, all of this. It's all integrated, and it just becomes I've used this expression too much, but it's like jumping in the deep end. But when you're watching Red Zone, it's like you've got a Lilo with you. It is. Oh God, I don't know why I've gone so off on metaphors this time, but it's genuinely it's just a little support aid that keeps you there and keeps you sort of grounded in what's going on.
I really like that metaphor. Well done.
Is that your only point? You're just reviewing the metaphor?
Yeah, I don't think I've played Shaps enough compliments. So
yeah, Joe, what? Yeah, well done, Shaps. We really like your. That's it. That's all I've got.
Right at the top drawer, Sam. Good job.
Right, lovely. But yeah, thank you, boys. I think it's really, really important to help people that may not know kind of how they can find their way into the NFL and give them some useful tips. So I think this is really beneficial. And if you're someone that has, been interested in the NFL for years and years and years, tell us how you got interested. I know my dad got interested through like I think he used to be on Channel 4 or Channel 5 or something like that in the glory days of Dan Marino. So I'm sure there's lots of mad ways that British fans have ended up following the NFL. So thank you. Right, moving on. So we're not going to do our usual kind of guess the player game at the end that we like to do this week. With not many kind of wheelings and dealings in the NFL this week, other than obviously the live Sam Darnold trade that happened earlier in the show. We're just going to cut straight to the trivia man himself with the answer to last week's trivia question and also a question for us to think about ready for next week. So over to the mathematical trivia man that is Ed Shapland.
Oh, yeah. So I've actually got a little fun story to throw in here as well, but I'll do that after. Just anyway. So start you off with last week's. I know you've all been waiting. Last week's trivia question, right? So I asked you who is the most recent player to join the top 5 in most interception return touchdowns of all time. I gave you the hint that he retired. His last season was the 2019 season. He played for the. I didn't give the audience this hint, but I then had to give Thornsy and Dan the hint as they couldn't get it. That he played for the Patriots and the Broncos, and they correctly guessed that his name was
Aqib Talib.
Correct. He's the most recent member of the crew. You know,
down there. A strong name, isn't it? Sorry. Like that is that's like a lockdown corner's name. Like,
oh yeah,
you've just been shut down by Aqib Talib. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
So yeah, he leads, and I believe it was 9 or 10. I don't actually still have the article up, so it's one of the two. Right, and then before we go into today's question, I thought, while we're on this sort of like intro to the thing, I come up with a lot of these. It started because I got the wrong segment with Thornsy's segment like 4 weeks ago now. But they sort of sum up a lot of my thing. I like the weird part of sport. I like the fun little trivia and facts, as Thornsy and Dan will tell us. Will tell anyone. Well, probably they don't talk about me outside of the podcast, but still, as Thornsy and Dan would tell people, I love spouting random facts and bit of knowledge. So, for instance, my first bit of knowledge was Super Bowl I was between Green Bay and Kansas City Chiefs. Fun fact. Do either of you two know the name of the receiver who caught the first touchdown?
I could have named Super Bowl MVP, which was Bart Starr, but
yes.
I don't know the wide receiver. Thorns looks perplexed. What else is new? Sorry, Thorn.
But yeah, so he was. What? Sorry.
I think
that was uncalled for.
Oh, sorry. You couldn't have sounded more sad about it.
Anyway, so the receiver who caught the touchdown was a guy called Max McGee. Have you ever heard of him? No? That's because he was actually in because the starting receiver that was supposed to play instead of him, he was like the 4th-string receiver, the other receiver who was supposed to play ahead of him, was like blew out his knee or something in the warm-ups or just injured himself. So he came in for that. But my fun bit of trivia is he was quite an old guy. He was from the AFL with the Green Bay in the AFL, moved in, but he'd actually not gone to sleep the night before because he expecting not to play a single down. He had been drinking and partying the whole night before. And yeah, so he'd been drinking and partying the whole night before. got the call up, apparently literally in the changing rooms before they started. He was told, oh yeah, Maxi boy, you're now starting. So he was like, oh no. And then, yeah, he caught the first touchdown. And for those of you at home, if you want to Google Max McGee Super Bowl I and look at a photo of him, he was about, I believe he was in his 30s at the time of the Super Bowl. And he is not a man you'd call looking in his prime. He looks hungover, and he is hungover. And yeah, I just think that's a fun fact. The fact the first ever receiving touchdown in a Super Bowl was caught by a backup who was hungover as hell, expecting not to play in the game.
Got him.
So I didn't say it, so it's allowed. So it's all good. Anyway, so yeah, that's my fun fact, and that's actually from a YouTube channel. I'll give a little shout out to them. They were called SB Nation, but they've since changed their name to Secret Base, and they basically upload stuff about the little weird parts of sports, like they do basketball as well. They'll do like iconic moments in sports, do a rewind, or just fun facts, like random rules. Like for instance, it's illegal for you to run underneath the post trying to swap field goals from underneath the posts. You can't goaltend in the NFL because a team once drafted a 7-foot tall player with the purpose and gave him the purpose of goaltending. But yeah, so like it's little quirks and rules like that. But anyway, so just something fun that also could increase your interest. Anyway, nevertheless, the moment you were waiting for, this week's trivia question. I'm going to get a jingle made for this. Who is the all-time leading sack leader? That player. Right, let me think about how to phrase this again. Sorry. Who is the all-time leading sack artist? We'll go with from the defensive tackle position. So a player who is listed as a defensive tackle, who is the all-time leading sack artist?
I mean, I would have a guess, but I don't want to give.
You can have a guess after the show.
Thank you very much. Lovely, great. Thanks, Shaps. Talking of hungover pictures makes me think of that picture of Gronk at one of the pro days that he went to. I don't know if anyone's seen this, and again, you can find this online. There's a picture of Rob Gronkowski from one of his pro days where he's like his eyes are red and like hardly open, and he just looks rough as anything. And that guy went on to win however many Super Bowl rings. I think it's 4, but who knows? Yeah, anyway, and on that note, talking of hangovers and stuff, we move forward and look forward to kind of next week, maybe a more fast-paced episode next week where we talk about things that we're kind of used to, a bit more experienced NFL fans are accustomed to, but also like if you are just getting into the NFL, like please join us again, and we'll definitely have some stuff for you to have a listen to. But once again, as always, thanks for joining me, gentlemen. So, Shaps, have a nice week, mate.
You too, my friend. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Nice and Thorns. Have a good week. Sunshine.
Thank you. I will try my best.
That's all we can ask for. Thanks, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.